Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. This is Kim Langling, your host, and I am so pleased that you are spending just a small part of your day with me and my special guest today. His name is Donald Skip Mondragon. No, Mondragon. I've been practicing the pronunciation of his names, folks, his last name. So it's Mondragon. So we welcome Donald, or Skip. We're just going to stick with Skip because that's a lot easier to say. He is an Army veteran of 26 years, and he was a full bird colonel. And he is here with me today to share some of his experiences and stories of his 26 years while serving in the United States Army. Thank you so much, Skip, for being with me today on Let Fear Bounce.
Thank you, Kim. I've been looking forward to this.
You know, we've had a heck of a time getting this all together. My goodness, things going on in my life and illness and things like that. And then right before I hit record, I explained to Skip that we are under a tornado watch right now. And if we lose power and he loses me, that's because the tornado is a-coming. So it's been quite interesting trying to get us two together so we can actually get our chat in. So I want to ask Skip, and in 26 years, my goodness, first off, thank you so much for your service to our country. And I thank every veteran, as I believe that they should be thanked for all of the sacrifices and things that they have given, whether it was in peacetime or not. You are always sacrificing something, especially time away from your loved ones and your family. So first off, thank you for your service. And I want to ask, do you have any stories or any one thing? And I know 26 years is a long time, but any one thing that really stands out to you that is something that's just ingrained in your memory forever?
Kim, I want to say you're welcome. And I want to thank you, my sister, for your service to our nation. The one thing that probably stands out as the highlight of my career would be my time in Mosul during OIF-1, Operation Iraqi Freedom 1. I was asked to be the OIC, the officer in charge of the 21st Cache North, in charge of 220 personnel, to be the person overseeing the operations there. Now, the nice thing about the 21st Cache North was that we were in support of the 101st Airborne Air Assault with Major General Petraeus, who was in command there of the Northern Sector. Now, my two senior colleagues were leaving, and they turned to me and said, Skip, we think you should be the OIC. And when they said that to me, my thoughts were initially, are you kidding me? Actually, it was a little bit more colorful language.
Right.
I'm thinking something else, but I didn't say it. They explained that to me, and they said, think about it, Skip. And I was thinking, I know how to give great medical care. I know what a medical team looks like. I can do that. But all that other stuff, running a hospital, logistics, force protection, air evacuation, telecommunications, everything else that goes into running a combat support hospital. Are you kidding me? I'm thinking, oh, hell no. I'm thinking no. But I had some conversations with my wife. I'm praying. I'm having conversations with a senior colleague of mine, Dave Gifford. Dave was on my staff back at Darnall Army Medical Center at Fort Hood. He had commanded several hospitals. And I'm having these email conversations with Dave. Meanwhile, with my wife, praying about it. And Dave says, Skip, you need to rethink this. When they are making decisions there on the base, the hospital needs to be represented by an 06. You need to rethink this. So over the course of the week, I went from no and no to yes, I would like this job. I would like to do this job. And the verse that came to mind was out of the passage of the book of Esther, where Mordecai is talking with Esther, where the Jews are going to be exterminated. And he says, Esther, you need to go talk to King Xerxes. And she says, if I perish, I perish. But Mordecai says, but for such a time as this, you've been called. And she does go before the king, and it saves the Jewish people for such a time as this.
Yeah.
So I took the job, and that turned out to be the highlight of my medical career, the highlight of my Army service, serving there in the northern sector with it.
That's absolutely awesome. And I can only imagine that you probably had some pretty tough days during that time frame.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah. I can understand that. On my end, just a little background, for the last 21, 22 years, another lady and I, we co-chair, it's called Project Support Our Troops. And we send care packages every single month of the year for the past 22 years.
Oh, wow.
To those who are deployed. And we do that through my veteran post. And we had many in the medical field that we sent boxes to.
Oh, wow.
And we would get letters back and emails back.
Yes.
From them, thanking us, of course, for the stuff that we're sending, but then also just venting, or sharing something in emails, because some of them we kept in very close contact. It all depended,
Sure.
And there was a group that we kept in very close contact with. There were 16 of them, and only 14 came home.
Oh man.
And we were in touch with them for 16 months, very, very regularly, with the gentleman who was in charge of that group, that small unit. And he was maybe, I think, in his early 30s at that time, and he had been in for quite a while. And he kept in touch with us and shared things probably he shouldn't have, and shared when they lost their comrades. And so just from that perspective, from this side of the pond, being able to be a support in that way, even if it's just a listening ear, and learning and being able to read between the lines of what was said and what was shared. It's I think most civilians, they can't comprehend or want to actually know what it is that you may go through when you're in a war-torn area and your boots on ground. So I commend you for that. A medical hospital and being in charge of that, and being in charge of so many people and everything that entails. That was a tremendous amount of a weight on your shoulders during that time. How did you carry that weight successfully?
Well, first, a lot of prayer, spending time in my Bible. I had developed a close relationship with the chaplain, and I relied on a lot of people. What I came to understand was I didn't have the expertise in so many areas: logistics, air evacuations, communications, all these other areas, force protection. But I had a great staff. I had an outstanding staff, and they had the expertise. They could advise me. At the end of the day, with their input, I had to make the decisions. The buck stopped with me in terms of what went on, but it was with their outstanding input. So that's what made things go. And so it wasn't just all on me. Yes, at the end of the day, I had to live with the decisions, but I had all these wonderful people to rely on. And of course, I had God to rely on. And that was what helped me through this whole team, plus the support, getting emails from your family, and then the calls I could make home, family and friends supporting. That certainly makes a lot of difference. And you can tell when people are praying for you. There's just a powerful sense of that. And I tell my wife before every deployment is, honey, the safest place for me to be is in the center of God's will. And if I am there, that's the safest place for me to be. I set out with 4 major goals when I took that job. One was to provide outstanding medical care. Secondly, to have a seamless transfer to the 67th Cache when it was time for us to prepare to leave. 3 was to get all of our 220 personnel home safely, and 4 was to glorify God. When we left Iraqi airspace, I felt like this 300-pound gorilla crawled off my back. When we got into CONUS, continental US, and we got off that plane, I felt like getting down and kissing the ground. I kid you not. Yeah. And I realized when we arrived back at Fort Hood that, yes, we had provided exquisite medical care. When you're in an environment like that, you see the Army medical care at its best. You see things happen and care provided there that is world-class. We did have seamless transfer of care to the 67th cache. We did get all 220 of our personnel home safely.
Amen.
And
Amen.
I felt in my heart that God was glorified. And with that, I gave such great thanks. And I was so glad and grateful that I did accept that job. Plus, I had the opportunity to interact with, at that time, Major General Petraeus and his amazing staff with the 101st Airborne Division.
What an awesome story. Awesome. And everybody, you brought them all home, all 220. That's a major, major blessing. And I think for me anyway, at least my opinion is going into it, like you said before you would leave on deployments, you would talk with your wife and say the safest place for you to be is in the center of God's will. You don't hear a whole lot of people say that prior to being deployed to a war-torn area. And you truly, obviously, truly had total faith in that. And look how it worked. You know, God's hand was all over that, even on those hard days that you more than likely had. Amazing stuff. So thank you so much for sharing that part of it, that part of
You're
your
welcome, Kim. You're welcome.
That's just awesome. So do you have any, I don't know, everybody has their goofy stories. Do you have any like those goofball stories or one of those kind of stories that just sticks out in your head that makes you laugh every time you think of it?
A goofball story. Well, I remember when we were on first on active duty at our first duty station, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I was a captain. We just graduated from residency, had done a civilian residency in Canton, Ohio, made the trek to Lawton, Oklahoma. I had graduated off cycle, so I had graduated in December. Most graduates from residency will graduate at the end of June. We arrived at Fort Sill, Oklahoma on a bleak, cold, dark day. I remember it was January the 3rd, and it was dark, overcast, just bleak, cold. I remember that. It's getting the family settled. I'm going back to work. Now, a couple things there with that. First of all, I had permissive TDY. I think it was 10 days or something to get my family settled. Well, the chief of medicine, certain colonel, I won't name him, he was putting pressure on me. Skip, I want you to come back to work. Now, you don't know what you don't know. Because, see, I could have gone to his superior, the deputy commander of clinical services, and said, Colonel so-and-so is telling me I need to come back to work. I need to get my family settled. Would you please speak with him? But since I didn't know what I didn't know, the dutiful captain came back to work without getting his family fully settled. Well, that's one thing. Not so funny, but it's things like this where you get pressured and into doing things,
right?
Because you don't know. Now, the story I was getting to was Sherry takes one of our children. At that time, we had 3 young children. Adam was 4, Chris was 2, and Angeli was a baby. She's taking him in to see the doctor. And Sherry used to say, one of the kids never met a virus when they were out that they didn't bring home and introduce it to their other siblings. So they're going to see the doctor, and the nurse asked Sherry, what's your last 4? And Sherry goes, last 4 what? And the nurse replied, the last 4 of your Social Security, your husband's Social Security number. You're in the Army now. And ever since that time, Sherry and I laugh and say, "Oh yeah, Nurse Ratchet." So,
That's fun. I think it's fun. And anybody in the military is going to chuckle at that. That's
so,
been in the
yeah.
military.
There
No,
was
yeah.
another time Sherry's walking across the street. This is I don't know, matter of years later. And then we have 5 children. They're still relatively young. They're walking across the street. I think they were going to somewhere on post. And one of the officers, one of the MPs stops, looks at the Sherry and the kids and goes, lady, they must all look like their father.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yes. I used to tell the kids, you guys need to behave yourself because there is no mistake who you belong to.
Right, right. They will have no problem finding your parents. So I want to ask you, as a veteran, and I ask all veterans that I talk to this question: to you, would you have traded any part of your service to this country? Would you have traded it for anything?
Would I have traded any part? If I had to do it over, Tim, I've told many a person I would do it again. I was so proud and privileged to serve our great nation. I get to take care of some amazing soldiers, family members, and retirees over the course of my career. I get to do things that I never thought I would do, and under circumstances that you think about a little bit before you join the Army, thinking, okay, the Army goes to war, but you don't really understand what that is until you're in those circumstances and see firsthand what cutting edge, world-class medicine can be delivered under those circumstances. And then to see the courageous young men and women who put their lives on the line when you're in a situation like that. And then you are called upon to save their lives, to salvage limbs, and to get them back home safe. That they entrust themselves to us in the medical field to do that for them. That in itself is a great honor. I always consider it such a privilege when people would come and see me, whether in that war zone or there in garrison, when you're taking care of a patient that they've entrusted themselves to me. I would tell residents when I would teach them and medical students, patients will tell you things they won't tell anybody else. Patients will take things that are potentially toxic and follow treatments that are potentially toxic and dangerous at your advice. And patients will allow you to invade their body in ways that they will not allow anybody else. Do not take that charge lightly. That is a sacred trust.
Sacred trust. There you go. And you know, I wasn't surprised when you said that you would do it again. Every veteran I've spoken to, they've all said the same. I would do it again. And this is from World War II veterans down to the younger generation of today. They said, you know, we would do it again, even though we saw things we didn't anticipate. We had to do things that we really probably hadn't thought of doing prior to joining. We would still do it again. And the main thing was the brotherhood and the sisterhood that they all held each other together. And
that's right.
I never get tired of listening to stories from veterans, you know, such as yourself and all of the ones over the years that I've spoken to. Now, this episode is going to be running up to Veterans Day. So I have one more question for you, and that is simply, to you, what does Veterans Day mean to you personally?
To me, Veterans Day is being part of a long line of history of fellow brothers and sisters who have served this nation honorably. dating back throughout our history. That as vets, we are one piece of that long, committed history. And most nameless and faceless, but have served honorably in commitment to serving this nation and its cause. That's what Veterans Day means to me. I've had several family members who have served. I had an uncle who served in the Army, was captured by the Japanese during World War II, survived the Bataan Death March, and died in a concentration camp, my Uncle Pete, of starvation and malaria. I had another uncle that served in World War II, my daddy-o, my stepfather in the Navy, my father in the Army, my brother was in the Corps, another brother in the Navy. So we come from a tradition. I had other uncles that served of service. But we are part of that long line. You are part of that long, long, long line that goes before us. And those that are serving now and those that will serve, we are brothers and sisters in that service. That's what Veterans Day means to me.
Awesome. Thank you. You know, as you were talking, that made me think, as you keep saying that long line and we're that small piece, it makes me think of like a knitted blanket or a crocheted Afghan and all those things that are, you know, interwoven so tightly and intricately that can make this huge, you know, it's a tapestry or a quilt or a blanket of some sort. But that line is just, it's all weaved. And, you know, it's a thread that's been, you know, the needle has been threaded by God. And he's, you know, the master weaver. He's taken all those pieces and parts and put us in that long line and woven everything through over, you know, good, bad, ugly, beautiful, joyful, triumphant, tragic, all of that to make the history of, you know, those who have served into this one massive, beautiful blanket. If that makes sense. That's what was coming to mind as you were talking about that long line. That's what was coming to mind. I have a creative mind, and that's what I literally got a picture of that in my head. So I might have to write a story about that now.
There you go, on your blog. See, my wife's a knitter and she crochets also, so I could easily picture that.
Yeah, and I'm a crocheter as well. I crochet all the time. So awesome. That is awesome. Doug, I'm glad you got that then. You're not just sitting there going, wow, this lady's kind of crazy. But I thank you so much for your time. And I would love to have you back on again, because there's so much more that we could talk about. We just barely scratched the surface of your 26 years of service, but I would love to have you back on again if you are open to that, sir.
I would be delighted, Kim.
That would be awesome. So thank you so much for your time today, Skip. And those of you who are listening in, thank you once again for spending a small part of your day with myself and my special guest, Skip. And let's fear bounce. So until next time, everybody, we will talk to you soon.